Hi Guy, welcome to CBS Beyond the GDAS. In Fairmont Crest, the most dangerous relationships rarely begin with a gun or blood. They begin with a proposal that sounds charitable, a glance that seems accidental, and a quiet sense that someone has stepped too close to the part of your life you guard with your teeth. Joey understands that better than anyone, because he survives by controlling risk and making things legal before they can ever become a charge. So when Leslie shows up wrapped in the sincere-looking mission of fundraising for a free clinic, Joey doesn't see kindness first. He sees questions. Where will the money come from? Whose hands will it pass through? What trail will it leave behind? And most importantly, if everything explodes tomorrow, who gets dragged down first while someone else walks away clean, untouched, and smiling? Joey's caution isn't a mood, it's muscle memory, built from near misses and connections that looked harmless until they threatened to kill him. With paperwork, testimony, and a transfer he can't explain. That's why, instead of diving headlong into the scandalous romance everyone whispers about, he does what he believes is smarter. He pulls Bill into the situation not as a friend, but as a brake. An alarm system, a legal wall erected before the fire reaches the door. Joey consults Bill about every crack that could turn into an investigation, every way Leslie might be using dirty money, and every strategy to protect himself if the story turns poisonous. In the coldest corner of his thinking, he even wants the option to make Leslie carry the responsibility if the wrong people come knocking. Joey isn't only trying to avoid trouble, he's preparing an exit. And if he has to, he's preparing a sacrifice. Bill, who has spent his life reading power through consequences, recognizes the shape of that request immediately. Joey is asking how to survive the fallout, and how to stand in the one place where blame will miss him by inches, while Joey is reinforcing his defenses with legal advice. Leslie's romance begins to slide into danger in the most terrifying way possible. It stops being about eyes and promises and becomes about a weapon that fits perfectly into a palm. Marcel enters her world like a shadow that turns everything into a ritual, teaching, controlling, instructing her how to hold a pistol, how to breathe, how to aim without shaking. Leslie stands in front of that gun with a kind of dread that isn't simple nerves. It's the instinct of a woman who realizes she's being pulled out of the last moral space she still believed she owned. She can try to tell herself it's self-defense, that Joey's world is dangerous and she needs to know how to protect herself. But the cold weight of metal doesn't speak the language of protection. It speaks the language of choice. Once she learns, she will be forced to justify why she learned it and who she's willing to use it on. Marcel doesn't need many words to tighten the pressure. The moment a gun enters her story, her life becomes something that can be demanded, tested, and proven. Leslie's discomfort deepens into something sharper, the awareness that she's stepping onto a floor of glass over consequences she can't control. And the cruel twist is that the danger doesn't come only from Joey. The more lethal threat is standing right beside her, wearing the calm face of the man who calls himself her teacher. Marcel, the one guiding her hands, is not Joey's partner at all. He is the man trying to bring Joey down. He isn't an ally of Joey's empire, he's a predator studying its weak points, looking for the cleanest way to carve out the heart. Leslie, to Joey, might be a risk, but to Marcel, she is a key. Marcel sees what makes her perfect, a woman with a believable reason to approach Joey. A story that looks good enough to lower suspicion. A mission that makes people afraid to question her too loudly. A free clinic is the most elegant mask in Fairmont Crest, because no one wants to be the villain who blocks charity. Marcel understands that, and he places Leslie at the center of his scheme like a piece that shines in daylight, while carrying poison inside. From the outside, people will say Leslie is with Joey for money, status, thrill, scandal. But underneath, her relationship with Joey is a double gameon that could end with her dead if she slips even once. She must play the lover convincingly enough to get close, while delivering what Marcel wants without letting Joey feel her hands in his pockets. Every touch, every meeting, every step deeper into Joey's life becomes a calculation: what she took, what she sent, what she hid, and how much closer she moved to the edge. This romance is dangerous not simply because Joey is a powerful man who might punish betrayal. It is dangerous because Marcel is the man holding the leash, and Marcel will never allow a witness to walk away once she has seen too much. Joey doesn't fully trust her. Marcel trusts her even less. Leslie is trapped between two jaws, and neither side believes a spy deserves mercy. What makes it worse is that the deeper Leslie goes, the more she sees the human fractures Joey tries to bury under charm and control. Joey carries guilt over Doug's death like a bruise he can't hellily cover with expensive suits and ruthless decisions. And then there is Vanessa, a connection that is both a wound and a chain, a name that can destabilize him in a single breath. Leslie doesn't need new information to feel the power of those weaknesses. Their gravity is obvious. Marcel knows it too. He expects her to exploit it, to use Joey's guilt and his tangled history as leverage, as a way to slip past his defenses and reach what matters. But every time Leslie touches that guilt, she also touches the line inside herself that still wants to believe she isn't a monster. She came in with the language of a clinic, a cause she could use to justify her actions even to her own conscience. Yet Marcel turns that cause into camouflage, and Joey turns the relationship into a risk file he plans to manage with Leslie positioned as the name he can write on the blame if he needs to. On Joey's side, suspicion thickens like toxic fog. He may let the world think he's drowning in scandal, but inside, he measures everything in liability. He cannot accuse Leslie openly without admitting he's afraid, so he circles the truth through Bill and through strategy. If investigators appear, if paperwork gets subpoenaed, if someone tears off the charity label and reveals what's underneath, Joey wants to be standing on the safe side of the blast radius. And the colder his mind becomes, the clearer Leslie's nightmare grows. Joey is preparing to survive even if she becomes collateral damage. Leslie begins to sense it in the tiny changes and extra pause in Joey's voice. A look that weighs her instead of wanting her, a moment where the warmth feels rehearsed. She is forced into a brutal paradox. To stay alive, she needs Joey to believe in her. To complete Marcel's assignment, she must steal the very thing that will make Joey destroy her. She has to walk a wire, pulling Joey closer while hiding a blade behind her back. There is no safe room in Fairmont Crest because even brightly lit spaces can hold eyes that judge, calculate, and prepare. Marcel's presence becomes its own kind of clock. He doesn't need to hover, his silence is the pressure. Marcel taught her to hold a gun, and that alone gives him a sick kind of authority. He placed something irreversible in her hands, and he can demand she prove what she learned at any moment. Meanwhile, Haley continues her own dangerous plan against Bill. Driven by greed and the belief she can seize what doesn't belong to her, her scheme runs like a parallel current, poisoning the atmosphere and pulling Bill tighter into a web he did not ask for. Bill is already forced to anticipate Haley's moves, but now he finds himself acting as Joey's legal shield while sensing the darker network tightening around Leslie. Bill knows that danger doesn't always arrive with a direct threat. Sometimes it arrives through proximity, through becoming the man who cleans up disasters he didn't create. Joey's questions sharpen Bill's instincts. If Leslie is tied to dirty money, if someone is using her, then Joey is inches from a crisis that could spread like wildfire. And in Fairmont Crest, wildfire doesn't just burn the guilty. It burns whoever stands near them when the wind changes. Leslie's internal war grows uglier by the day. The romance stops feeling like a role she can step out of. It becomes a whirlpool, pulling her deeper whenever she struggles. She looks at her own hands and wonders if they still belong to the woman who claimed she wanted to help people, or if they belong to Marcel's plan, or if Joey is already imagining those hands as evidence. She tries to cling to the clinic as a moral anchor, but the gun keeps returning to her mind like a prophecy. She is learning how to take life while still trying to speak the language of saving it. That contradiction begins to harden her into strength that feels clean, but into a sharper kind of survival. Because when a person is pushed into a corner, they either break or become what they fear. Marcel, patient as a hunter, waits. He monitors every shift in Leslie's access to Joey, every small victory, every crack. He doesn't rush because time favors the man who set the trap. Leslie, meanwhile, feels time draining away because the longer she plays both sides, the more likely she is to slip. One wrong expression, one misplaced question, one moment of hesitation, and the illusion collapses. Marcel expects her to deliver something decisive as inside of information or a major asset, enough to cripple Joey so thoroughly he can't recover. Marcel doesn't need to tell her what happens if she fails. The lesson is already in the gun. Joey isn't idle either. With Bill's guidance reinforcing his instincts, his caution starts to sharpen into defensive cruelty. He smiles, he seduces, he lets the scandal breathe. But inside he is mapping escape routes and blame routes. The closer Leslie gets, the more he wants proof that if the authorities come, he can point to her as the source of poison. That is the darkest truth Leslie cannot ignore in this game. She is valuable only while she is useful and disposable the moment she becomes dangerous. In the end, everything tightens toward the same point. Marcel is watching, waiting for Leslie to complete her part so he can strike Joey with a final blow. Joey is building legal armor and preparing to redirect responsibility. Bill is balancing Joey's crisis against Haley's threat, and Leslie stands in the middle like a match in a room full of invisible gasoline. She knows the moment is coming when she will be forced to choose between Marcel and Joey. Between living and dying, between her clinic story and the pistol in her hand, between continuing to act and saving herself with one irreversible move. The most terrifying part is not that she might be forced to fire. The most terrifying part is that Marcel seems to be waiting for the exact moment her hand tremble, so he can order her to prove that the pistol lesson was never just instruction, but the beginning of an execution Joey won't see until it's already too late. In Fairmont Crest, people like to believe danger only arrives when a secret slips in, someone loses control, and says a name that should never be spoken. But sometimes danger comes in a far quieter form, an envelope placed in exactly the right spot, a stack of documents copied at the perfect moment, an anonymous call delivered to the one person who knows how to turn suspicion into action. And if what's unfolding is real, then Leslie and Joey are no longer facing a romantic crisis or a power game. They're facing the possibility of being slammed into the legal machinery itself, where every curious stare becomes judgment, and every excuse is crushed under to words that change everything: an arrest warrant. Joey has always lived with the dread of being traced, of being locked down by the very systems he thinks he can manipulate. He can look calm at parties, he can wear scandal-like armor, but deep inside he knows it only takes one link snapping for the whole chain to drag him under. Joey's caution has never been about softness. It's about survival. He understands that the system can kill a man with paperwork faster than any bullet ever could. That's why his earlier decision to consult Bill wasn't merely being careful. It was the reflex of someone who already smelled danger moving closer. Yet Joey also knows something brutally simple: an arrest warrant doesn't require his permission. It only requires evidence that sounds convincing enough in the hands of police and a narrative that feels coherent enough to close. That is exactly where Marcel becomes the most terrifying shadow in the story. Marcel doesn't need to win through open violence. He can win through timing. If Marcel really provides evidence to the police, he is shifting the battlefield from gossip and suspicion into procedure and state power. And once the game enters that territory, Leslie and Joey lose control of the rhythm. They no longer get to explain on their terms, negotiate in private, or manage the mess the way Fairmont Crest always tries to do when it wants to bury a fall. Everything becomes colder, louder, more brutal. Someone gets cuffed, someone gets photographed, someone gets read their rights. And the world receives one clear message: to are being treated like criminals. For Leslie, this is the nightmare made solid, because she has always been the most vulnerable piece in a double-sided game. She came in with the clinic as her cover, with the image of a woman trying to do something right. But the deeper she went, the more she became a tool. If Marcel holds anything that can be reshaped into evidence, then Leslie is the one standing closest to the blade, because she doesn't have Joey's system to buffer impact. She doesn't have an empire that can buy time, no machinery powerful enough to muddy the narrative. She has only a fragile reputation and a trail of choices Marcel can stitch into a neat story of intent. Leslie understands what that feels like, being shoved into a corner with no exit, being forced to stand still while someone else writes the story of who she is. Her fear isn't only being arrested. Her fear is being officially branded the villain, while everything she ever tried to believe about herself gets erased in a single news cycle. Joey won't escape either. If an arrest warrant happens, it will strike the one thing Joey values above everything: control of his image, and control of his ability to survive by staying one step ahead. Fairmont Crest enjoys scandal only as long as it remains entertainment. Rumor, something you can whisper about over champagne. Once police arrive, rumor becomes legal truth. And for Joey, that kind of truth destroys more than freedom, it destroys power. A man in handcuffs isn't running the game anymore, no matter how rich or feared he once was. What tightens the tension further is the possibility that Marcel is engineering his final blow, in a way that leaves both Leslie and Joey with no time to adjust. Marcel understands the psychology of the system: build a complete enough narrative, hand over just enough proof to trigger procedure, then step back and watch the gears grind your target into dust. If Marcel is doing that, he doesn't just want Joey broken. He wants Leslie stripped of every last chance to escape being a pawn. Because once police start circling, Leslie will panic. She will lose her balance, and a person off balance makes mistakes. Marcel only needs one mistake to turn it into pattern, to make it look like consistency, to make the file feel inevitable. Joey, shoved into defense mode, will be even more dangerous in his reactions. His first instinct may not be to save Leslie, but to save himself. And if he has to, he'll cut Leslie out of his life like infected flesh. Leslie is trapped between two fears moving at the same speed: prison on one side, Joey's betrayal on the other. She can endure rumors, stares, even danger in the dark. But the threat of arrest forces the hardest question into the light. Is any of this worth trading her freedom for? She wants to believe she still controls something. But every sign that Marcel has evidence feels like a door slowly closing. Every detail of her past becomes a trap, every meeting with Joey, every question about money. Every intimacy that once helped her get closer can now be reframed as intent. And the most terrifying truth is that she doesn't even need to be guilty to be arrested. She only needs to appear convincingly placed inside a believable story. Joey's sense of security fractures too. He may have leaned on Bill to prepare legal defenses, but if Marcel's evidence is strong enough, that preparation may only buy time and not prevent the cuffs. And Joey will hate that more than anything because it proves a ruthless reality. There are forces willing to weaponize the law, and once they lock onto him, everything he thought was power becomes illusion. Joey begins to see Leslie not just as a lover or a tool, but as a leak. He will wonder whether she revealed something by accident or guided Marcel on purpose. Suspicion turns affection into interrogation without words. Leslie, sensing the shift, becomes more frantic, more unstable. And in her instability she creates gaps that make Joey even more convinced she's guilty. Meanwhile, Marcel holds the absolute advantage of the man standing outside the blast radius. He doesn't need to justify himself to Leslie or Joey. He only needs to satisfy the police at the minimum level required to make them move. Marcel may have been waiting for this moment, the moment when a single push can make both of them collapse in public. And once police begin moving, Marcel will know he has turned Fairmont Crest into a stage for a very loud downfall where every plea comes too late. If arrest warrants truly appear, Doug's death, Joey's buried guilt, Leslie's exploitation, and Marcel's hidden leverage will no longer be separate fragments. They will be pinned into one single picture, enough for outsiders to believe this is a case, not a chain of scandals. And that will send shockwaves through more than Leslie and Joey's lives. It will reshape how Fairmont Crest looks at them. The people who once smiled will step back instantly. The people who once wanted to partner will cut contact. Isolation will arrive like lightning. For Leslie, it will feel like losing the right to be seen as human. For Joey, it will feel like losing the power he built out of other people's fear. But the most brutal edge and the reason the story cannot end her is the moment Leslie realizes that if police truly target her and Joey, Marcel may no longer need her at all. And when a man like Marcel no longer needs a pawn, that pawn tends to disappear in the kind of silence no one can stop. In that instant, Leslie understands the worst threat isn't handcuffs, it's being permanently silenced before she can ever tell the truth. And Joey, feeling the trap tightening, will face a choice that arrives in seconds: protect Leslie to keep her out of police hands, or sever her immediately to save himself. There will be no time for moralityonly instinct, because the moment a siren echoes at the far end of the road into Fairmont Crest, Leslie will know the arrest warrant may be coming, but what Marcel has truly sent isn't just the police. It's an ending reserved for anyone who knows to Mushan she might be the one whose voice gets taken before she can scream. The Beyond the Gates CBS Spoilers channel specializes in analyzing, theorizing, and discussing plot points in the series from the perspective of a longtime fan. This allows viewers to gain deeper, more objective, and interesting insights. Subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the latest news about the series.